Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Summer greetings. The joke here in Seattle is that summer doesn't actually start until July 5th because it's usually raining until then, up until the 4th of July when we usually have some kind of drizzle. But with global warming, that's no longer the case. So we are enjoying some beautiful weather of late. And it's like there's been enough rain to keep the blueberries and the raspberries and the flowers happy, but enough sunshine to keep me happy. I am enjoying it. So I am recording this the day after running the Cascade Super Marathon. And I briefly mentioned having signed up for this marathon a couple of episodes ago when I covered my training for the Epic 5 run. And that was episode number 94, in case you want to go back and listen to that. Now, I won't go into the details of yesterday's marathon. I'll save that for another episode where I will cover it in a little bit more detail. But I will say that I finished strong and I had a smile on my face, and that's all good. If we're not already Facebook friends, you can friend me there and you'll see photos that I've posted. I'm also on Instagram, and the best place probably to find those photos would be BethWhitwa, BethWhitwa. I'm playing around with my Instagram accounts right now, trying to figure out. I wish that I could combine them. I've got two, but check out Beth Whitwa, and that's more like running stuff and more personalized stuff. So anyway, that marathon is behind me, and I'm feeling pretty good today. I'm actually feeling really good. And if I didn't think that I really needed at least a day to recover, I might go out for a short run just to shake things off. But I am going to hold off, and I'm going to relax today. Alas, what I'm doing instead is I am preparing this week's episode for you, which I am delighted to be sharing. Now, today's conversation is with Senator Mona Das. Mona and I chatted for the podcast when she was running for Congress back in the fall of 2017. That was episode 27, if you want to go check that out. And you'll hear in that episode a lot more about her background. And after an unsuccessful congressional race, Mona turned right around and she ran for state senate here in Washington. Now, she won and has now completed her first session. And now that she's gotten her feet wet as a state senator, it gave us a chance to talk about her transition from running her own business to her life as a senator and the challenges of settling into this work. Mona is representative of the changing face of politics. She's a woman of color. Still, she's in the minority, but it's clear that she is making an impact on policies and how differently things will be in our future because of these massive changes that happened during the last election. We've got more women of color, we've got more men of color, and it's all good. Now, Mona is a bold woman. She is outspoken. She does not mince her words, and she's not afraid to be vulnerable. I think in the past, some of these qualities might have been seen as weaknesses, but she's proud of who she is. And in my opinion, she's a fantastic example of who we want leading our local and national politics. She recognizes the challenges that women face when considering whether or not to run, and we talk about some of that in this episode. And she's actually started a coaching business and is working on a book to encourage women to run for office. And the book will be a how-to, something that she missed herself in the process of running and then getting settled in to her position. So she is going to fill that with all of the things that she wished that she had. This is such a wonderful, heartfelt conversation and really quite emotional at the end. Having come from a small village in the poorest state in India, Bihar, she's now an elected member of the House, and Mona is grateful for where she is. She is so grateful, and I am too, because she is such an inspiration. Now, before I get to that conversation, just a quick little reminder that you're missing out if you're not part of our Patreon community. It's there that I post bonus material from these episodes, and it's usually in the form of an additional question that I ask of the guest. In the case of the most recent episode, you can find out why and how last week's guest, thru hiker Beth Jacino. She did the Camino de Santiago, 1,000 miles of that. She ended up with a rescue cat that she named Rue. Now, it doesn't have anything really to do with her walk on the Camino, but I just had to inquire about it. It was off topic, but it was just something I was dying to know about this little kitty. So you'll hear about that. Of course, becoming a Patreon supporter is more than just getting access to those bonus questions. It's really a way for you to support the show. Podcasts are free, and they should be. But it would mean a lot to me if you'd come on board with your pledge of support, a donation of just $5 a month, basically the cost of a drip coffee at Starbucks or maybe a mid-priced chocolate bar. How many of those are you eating each month, those chocolate bars? Just imagine if you could just say, yes, Beth, I really like what you're doing. Here's $5 a month. So save the calories. Don't eat that chocolate. And instead, let me know you enjoy the show and want to help build our community by becoming a supporter through Patreon. Just go to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon for details. Now with that, please enjoy this wonderful, delightful conversation with Senator Doss. Senator Doss. That's so fun to say.
It is.
You knew a long time ago, because we talked about this when we first chatted on the podcast. You knew a long time ago that you wanted to be a senator. Does it now when people say Senator Doss, do you go, huh? Look, who's that?
Literally. It's so weird. It's still weird.
You know, it always struck me, like I used to watch West Wing many years ago, and no matter how close someone was, like as a friend of the president, you always had to call him president.
Yeah.
And I notice, like when I'm in communication with your people or Pramila's people, it's always Congresswoman, it's always Senator. They're very formal about it, and I'm like, hey, Mona. But so is that weird for you, or is it just kind of natural?
It's very
now?
weird. It's still very weird because my life outside of Olympia ebbs and flows in rooms where people know that I'm a senator and in rooms where people have no idea. And so every time, like this morning, for example, I had like 8 meetings today. My first meeting, my friend Dylan said, Senator. My second meeting, Senator. Like they knew. And then I would have a meeting with someone else, or I came over to your house and it was like, Mona, it was like, and what I realized, and my first strategist for my first campaign, he used to get, like I used to be like, Pramila, Manka. He's like, you need to call her Congresswoman. And I'm like, oh. And it at one point he said they earned it. And
it's like doctor.
Yeah. And now that I am a senator, and it took me, I ran for office for 20 months. I can tell you that I earned that title. And the 47 years it took me to get there as well, definitely earned the title. And my staff is great. Chio is, God, she's everything. She's amazing. She is like literally the only reason why I passed six bills in my first session. She told me in the very beginning, I will always call you Senator unless we're alone. Mm. And she does that. And she always, we were out to dinner the other night with a group of friends, and she would always refer to me as Senator, and it was like all my friends and Chio, and it was just really funny.
Do you think it's hokey, or do you think that, that it's an important part of it?
It's really respectful. Mm-hmm. And I think especially as a woman of color, it's even more respectful because I did earn the title. And I was just meeting with the Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project. Jorge Barjon is the ED, and I was just telling him the story, which I'll share with you now. It's really interesting. So they say that if you are walking towards a white man, especially as a woman of color, and for me, I won't do this experiment because I'm little, so I'll probably fall over, but if you are walking towards a white man, they will just assume you're going to move, and if you don't, they'll actually run into you. And so what it's like to be in the Senate as a new person, as a woman of color, as someone who has had zero privilege. That's not true. I've had a lot of privilege, but that's not what I mean. As someone who has had zero clout in this way before, people now, when they see me, will walk immediately around me and they will always apologize. Sorry, Senator. And so for me, it's so funny because it's so strikingly different from my normal everyday life that I notice it. And I notice my white male colleagues don't think it's odd because it's just, either they've been there too long or they're used to, people walking around them anyway. And I know that when I'm almost about to hit somebody, I always say I'm sorry. And I think, and I always tell women, stop saying I'm sorry. Because what are we apologizing for? Because you're walking in the same opposite direction as someone else. And so I catch myself apologizing, and I catch people apologizing to me all the time now. And I always say, like, there's no need to be sorry. You're just walking.
We're just in the same space.
Yeah. And the other thing they do is they go out of their way to open the door for me. I mean, that's happened to me in, just being a woman walking around. But now it's like people like go out of their way to open the door for me. And it's very nice and it's very respectful, but it's also very weird. And I'm noticing it, right? I was in session for 105 days and it was just very different. I mean, you literally walk around, in Olympia, it's a little bit like celebrity status. And the only thing I can think about that it might be like, and I wouldn't know, but it's like a little bit like walking around like either royalty
or a rock star or
a
something.
rock star or the CEO of a very large company who would be a white man. That's the only thing I can think about that it feels like. And it's still every day. Like as soon as I open the door today, or you open the door, you said senator. And the last time you said Mona, and so it's just funny, like, and I appreciate it because I did work very hard for it. And as you know, 12 years ago, I decided I was going to be a senator and now I am, but I still miss my name. I still really appreciate it when people just call me Mona.
Note to self.
Yeah.
But it would be in bad form if I came to see you in Olympia and I saw you walking down the hall and I said, Mona.
It's half and half. I still get Mona sometimes because I see friends from.
I mean, you don't care.
But I don't
right,
care.
But it seems like other people would notice.
Other people would notice that you did not have the respect to call me senator. And, because I see friends from grad school time and time again coming down to Olympia and, they say Mona and that's fine with me. I'm okay with it. So call me Mona.
But it's other people.
Fine. Yeah.
I'll call you Mona.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Mona.
My pleasure, Beth.
Awesome to be here. So the last time we sat down, you were actually running for Congress.
That's right.
At that point, and things didn't go quite as you had hoped.
That's right.
Can you talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And I always tell my staff, it's not a mistake if you learn the lesson. And so I'm a fail fast kind of person. I learned that in grad school. Fail fast. I mean, I've been in business for 14, 15 years. I've run a mortgage business for a long time. And, you're bound to make mistakes. But what is that Wayne Gretzky quote? Like you miss every single one that you don't try or whatever. It's like I tried and I wasn't the choice. And I learned that later, much later than everyone else. It took me longer because no one says to you, oh, by the way, you're not the choice of the party.
Well, talk about
you should
that.
Get out. Yeah, I'd love to.
That I don't understand.
Yeah. It's like smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. And now that I'm on the other side of it, it's really been interesting to be part of those decision-making discussions about candidates. And what happens is, for those of you who are listening to this who might want to run someday, you got to do the work ahead of time to be the party sort of choice. And that work depends on where you live as to what that looks like. So essentially for some places, start going to your local party meetings and getting to know folks, get on the boards, get on committees. And then when positions become open, you're the natural choice. And what I've discovered is that most of my colleagues in the Senate and the House got there by an appointment because a space became open for whatever reason. That legislator had to leave, family, personal, whatever, Me Too, whatever. And then a space becomes open and the party then suddenly goes, oh my gosh, who do we know that lives in the 34th district? And then boom, somebody's name comes up and boom, they get appointed. And it happens very quickly. But you have to be ready, meaning you have to have already done the work. I can think of Senator Saldana, a very good colleague of mine. That's what happened with her. when Congresswoman Jayapal went to Congress, her seat was open. And so very quickly, Senator Saldana had been doing the work in the community. And so when Pramila's seat came open, immediately Rebecca's name was put forth.
Mm-hmm.
And they went through a whole process. And then, Rebecca ended up with the appointment. And she's fantastic. I mean, I love working with her. She's one of my favorite colleagues. And so that's kind of the normal path. And then you do it the Mona way, which is you wake up one day and say you're going to be a senator. And then you start telling people that you want to be in office. And then a friend suggests that you run for Congress against David Reichert because he's finally in a position where they think he can be beat. And you put your name in the ring and you don't ask permission from anybody. Most people ask permission.
Yeah, but I wouldn't know that.
Right, exactly.
And there's so many new people. There's so many new women specifically, and women of color and people of color who want to get into politics and they don't know the rules.
Right. And so that's my whole goal with my new business. I launched a business called Moxie, which has been the name of my business for many, many, many years. And it is to recruit, train, coach, mentor, and help fundraise for women and people of color and LGBTQ folks and younger folks, anyone that is in a marginalized group.
Yeah.
And I created the business that I wish was there for me 2 years ago when I decided to jump in, because nobody was out there teaching me what to do.
There wasn't a guidebook for it.
There is no guidebook. And so that's what my book will be about. Like, I just want to, we don't have time to wait for people. Most women, most people of color can't dedicate 2 years of their life and all of their life savings and all of their future savings to be a senator. I am single. I had some money. I don't anymore. But like I had the drive. As I told you before, it's like, I don't know where it comes from. It literally comes from within some deep, deep place. I literally don't know where it comes from. But they say you have to ask a woman 7 times before they'll consider running. And I heard 2 days ago that you have to ask a woman of color 11 times. Do you know how many times I was asked to run?
None.
0. Literally 0. And I did it anyway. And I made such a splash with my congressional race, even though I wasn't the chosen candidate. And we can talk about that if you want to dig deeper. But I made such a splash because I came out of nowhere with my moxie and my Mona and my motivation and my energy, which, by the way, doesn't quit. People are starting to figure it out. That I made such a splash that they wanted me.
You got on their radar.
Oh, yes, in a big way.
So before we get on to that too much further, the thing that strikes me about that process is that, like I said, and we talked about this before too, is that I have friends who have wanted to run, and then they just realize that it takes a lot of money. It takes time away from their family. They have to move somewhere else or spend a lot of time somewhere else. And the pay is not great. So it's not like they can contribute to maybe the household income, but it's not going to be a big contributor for it. So they decided not to. So it does take a lot of money, and it does take the support. And this is the part that I never realized. It takes that support from your committee in order to actually be able to go anywhere. And as a voter, I look at who's in my voter pamphlet, and I don't know that. I don't know who's getting the benefit. I read the bios and I read the statements and I figure out, okay, well, that's somebody that I could get behind.
And you look to see who endorsed them.
Yes, and I look to see.
Do you ally with the Planned Parenthood and the NARALs or whoever endorsed them? Yeah.
Right. There is that, but I think that is a lesser part of it, although I do think that is important. But my bigger point is that I could be all in on a candidate and think that they're really strong, but in the background, they have no money because the party isn't providing them with anything.
Well, one of the things I discovered, and this was an eye-opener, and will be for many of your listeners, every person on your ballot was chosen for you in one shape, one way or the other. And
by the time they make it on the ballot.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And many times the actual race is the primary. And in our state, we have a top 2 system. And so many times the really good candidates don't make it off the primary. And that's what happened in the case of the race that I ran for Congress, the 8th. I mean, I dropped out very early. There were 8 of us, I think, total, or maybe more than that. And, 2 men dropped out before me, and then I dropped out. And then the other 3 stronger candidates that had raised a lot of money, one brought some money with her at the table. The other one was the white guy. And then the other one was the chosen one. They were the strongest 3 financially. And I just didn't have the resources. I mean, I was not a wealthy woman. And had I had $200,000, $300,000 to throw into the race, I would have stayed in. But thank God I didn't spend $200,000 or $300,000 of my own money to fight against
somebody with $1 million.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, our system, and this is what, now that I'm on the other side and helping make these decisions for the party and for myself, like I said, I'm launching business to support candidates that I think deserve to be there, and our communities, frankly, deserve them to be there. The candidates, I believe, are doing it for the right reasons, like myself. I'm not doing it for power or status or anything like that. I'm doing it because I want to be at the table, and the voices of like mine have been away from the table forever. One of the phrases I ran on was, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I got tired of being on the menu. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially as a woman, especially as a woman of color, and especially as an immigrant. Our rights are being attacked every single day, especially with this atrocious organization that we have running our country right now. And I was just, like I said, with the Northwest Immigrants' Right Project, talking about all the immigrants that are coming in. There's refugees seeking asylum. And the thing that they're not talking about, and that we really dove in deep today, is that a lot of them are climate refugees. And I'm really tired in this country of not talking about the root problem.
Mm-hmm. So meaning they're coming from countries that are devastated because of the climate change, and there might be wars going on because of that.
Because
so just
of
to clarify,
lack of resources. Yeah, I mean, he was telling me that a lot of our people are coming now from Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador, where they can't grow food.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and so when you can't grow food, you can't feed your people. Famine, then you've got nefarious activity going on to keep people alive. And, this is the beginning of climate refugees. He called it, I love this phrase. I mean, I don't love it, but it sums it up.
Encapsulates it. Yeah.
Forced migration.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have people in office that understand the nuances of climate change, we're in trouble. And I'm sure you've seen...
It's not even the nuances.
Yeah, it's the real... Well, but we're not talking about this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're hiding it all. And I'm so tired of, the weather events. Hey, guys, Miami is going to disappear. It's flooding on a regular basis. I was in Venice when the floods were there. I mean, this is not, New Orleans.
We can't be shocked.
We can't be shocked.
I know.
New Orleans is pumping out water. Venice is pumping out water. Miami is pumping out water because we're choosing to live in climates that are no longer habitable. I mean, Arizona, I grew up in Arizona. I spent some time there. I'm sorry, but 120 degrees is not habitable.
No, it's not.
And so we are going to see our own climate refugees from our own country. And we better figure out what to do.
Well, we're seeing that now in Washington State, right? In the Seattle area. I mean, people from California have been coming here for a long time for that reason, because we have wetter weather and, they're under advisories constantly, underwater advisories, drought. And I hear that from people in Santa Fe also. They're undergoing drought a lot as well, and they're moving north for the same reason.
Yeah. So we got to start talking about this stuff. And we need to elect people who will talk about it and take bold action, because the climate change deniers, and we have one in the Senate, at least one, that has to go. We cannot ignore this problem. And that's why, and I shared this with you earlier, it's like I never really had a why I wanted to run. I mean, I have a why, obviously, but I just kept saying to people, we need more loud brown women in office. And now that I've got there and I have a cycle under my belt, I have 2 campaign cycles in the same year, a congressional race, an unsuccessful congressional race, and a successful Senate race, which then we had, a Me Too issue on my campaign as well, which was crazy. And then I've had 1 session under my belt, 105 days in Olympia, which every day there is like a week and every week is like a month.
Mm.
So I now know why I ran for office. It's because when the caucus room door closes and there's 28 Democrats in there, that's when you see cracks of xenophobia, white privilege, sexism, racism, misogyny.
These are people we elected. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
ma'am. Yes, Beth. Not only did we elect them, but there are 8 people of color now in the Senate. And so the words that you get used now aren't the racist language that you might imagine. It's things like,
And this is the Washington State Senate.
yeah,
Just
it's
to
things
clarify.
like the coded language. And it's not just our Senate caucus room. It's every caucus room. House, Senate, federal, local, city councils. I mean, when you hear things like you people, those people, that's coded language for racism.
No, there's no code about it.
Well,
That's what they mean.
They don't realize that it's coming across to the brown people sitting around the table as bad. And I'll tell you one of my favorite stories. I was very insistent that my staff reflect my district. There's 140 languages spoken in Kent, and my district is very diverse. And I wanted my staff to reflect that. So I hired women and women of color to work in my office. And when folks would come into my office, and it's really hard. The thing that took me a while to get used to was that everybody that came into the office, you have such little time in Olympia that your meetings are literally 15 minutes. And at minute 10, Chio, my LA, would knock on the door and give the wrap it up signal. And lobbyists know. It's just the public that would come and the constituents and the folks that have never been to Olympia, super nervous. It was so sweet. They were so nervous. And I would always try to put them at ease as like, you're doing great. Don't be nervous. I'm just a normal person, But they would tell me, everyone came asking for something. Everybody wanted something, whether it's money for their project or whatever. And so I realized that in 15 minutes, you can't possibly get to know someone or their organization or what their needs are. So the people that could be the succinctest would get in and out. And I'm a person who likes to build relationships. I've built businesses building relationships. And I got elected building relationships. And everything about life is a relationship building. But, in 15 minutes, I tried to build some rapport, have a conversation, understand what people wanted, and get them out the door. And most people would come in and they looked the exact opposite of me. They were white men, majority of them, and especially the lobbyists. And, I would always say they were always advocating for whatever their cause was. And if they were savvy enough, they realized that I really cared about diverse communities and communities of color. And so they would, sort of by the end of session, word started getting around. And I would always challenge them, the 3 white men that would come in. Hey, next time you come into my office, maybe you bring someone that reflects your community, or, how have you diversified your leadership? And they would always tell me about all their diversity that they have in their leadership and in their organizations. And then I would just say, well, next time you come into the office, maybe you can bring someone else that has a different perspective than you.
Wouldn't they just send somebody else in their place? Or no, these are people who are the ones who are always coming into the meeting?
Well, to get a meeting with a legislator in Olympia is like really hard because we only have very limited time. And again, these meetings are 15 minutes. And my staff would prioritize constituents. They have a whole way they would prioritize folks. And so a lot of times this was the only time they were going to come. And they usually have to make a trip from wherever they live and work. And so one day, I'll never forget this. We're in the caucus room, and let me just set up what the caucus room is like. There's 28 of us in a room, and as we keep adding Democrats, which is awesome, this year we flipped 3 seats, so there's 3 new ones, 3 new that they had to figure out where we were going to sit. It's a square table with a hole in the middle, right? And it's very intimidating, I'm guessing, to come into this room when everyone's just sitting around in their nice dresses and their suit and ties, and folks get invited into the caucus room very rarely. Most of the time in the caucus room is very sacred because we don't have very much time to talk about the bills. So we go in the caucus room, close the door, and we talk about the bills. Everyone who has a bill that's made it all the way through the process gets to share about their bill and talk about the bill, and then we can discuss the bill. So there's not a lot of time for other folks. But on National Guard Day, the National Guard came and they were invited in and they paraded in all their leadership. And there were 15 of them. And if you close your eyes, you might imagine what they all looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And me and the other 8 people of color in the caucus room just sort of darted looks at each other like, yep. And I didn't say anything. I just sat there and listened to their presentation and, whatever. And then the next day, a woman made a meeting and she was with the National Guard and they needed some money. I mean, I guess we give them their funding. And so she wanted to make sure that I was going to vote for their funding. And she came in and she sat down and she opens the folder and she opens the binder and she opens the pamphlet. And it's like, the pictures are right. The pictures should reflect the diversity of their organization. And I let her just talk and tell me about all the diversity that's going on in the National Guard. And I just looked at her and I said, so what are you doing to diversify your leadership? And she went on and on and on and on about all the things they're doing. And I just looked at her and I said, yesterday you brought in your leadership. And I said, none of them looked like me. And none of them looked like my other black and brown colleagues.
Or in the pictures.
And that's what I said. I didn't say anything in the meeting, but I said, I'm going to be in that caucus room next year. And when you come next year, I hope that your diversity of leadership is reflected. And if it's not, I might say something. And that's the power of putting someone like me in a position of where I can make these comments, because nobody ever questioned it before. It's just the norm.
Because the people in the room were reflected by the people who had just marched in.
Exactly. So let me tell you about one more story. One of my other favorite days. I had so many favorite days. So one day, I'm on the Environment and Technology Committee, and it was the day that we were discussing 100% clean. So it was a lot of lobbyists, a lot of oil lobbyists, and a lot of people that want to keep our system exactly the way it is, using a lot of fossil fuels, who want to keep things status quo.
Because it's to their financial benefit.
We need more resource. We need more time. If I had a nickel for any time anyone said anything about any legislation, we just need another year, and then a year from now, and we just need another year, right? And so that analysis paralysis is something that I'm very conscious of. And I just looked out, we've spent a lot of time as a community, as a state, as a democratic organization, diversifying the people who sit on the dais. In city government, state council, city council, school boards, state senate, and our federal legislators, we're starting to reflect our communities more. But I'll tell you what hasn't changed: the lobbyists and the people that come in to testify. And so now that I'm sitting on the dais, I'm up. I'm like sitting up, and I can see the sea of people. And it was oil lobby day for 100% clean, and there were so many people that wanted to testify that most of them had to sit in another room and be called in to testify. There was just hundreds of people.
What were they testifying? Can you explain that a little bit more?
So this was for a 100% clean bill, which would make us 100% clean by 2045.
The state of Washington.
Correct. The most progressive landmark legislation of its kind in the country. It's very bold. And there's a lot of interest that want to keep us using fossil fuels. And so these people come and testify why this bill or why parts of this bill are just not going to work for them, because their companies are going to go out of business.
Right. So these hundreds of people who came to testify were coming to testify against
the bill. I mean, there were definitely people there to testify for the bill. Mm-hmm. And so that day, I was sitting next to my good friend, Senator Marco Leas, and I just looked out, and it just dawned on me that like literally every single person in the room was white. And I just got angry, and I just picked up my phone, and I raised my phone over my head, and I took a picture. And Marco leans over, because he's sitting right next to me, leans over and goes, "What did you just take a picture of?" And I said, "Look." Because Marco's been in the legislature for 12 years. He's a white guy. And he goes, "Oh my God." I said, "Yeah." And that was the conversation we had on the dais. Mm-hmm. And then he got mad, and he sent out a tweet.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that it's interesting that he hadn't noticed it until you pointed it out.
Most people don't. And so let me just tell you that he counted 73 men and 27 women, not a single person of color. And then he got mad. And his tweet said, "Thanks to my colleague, Senator Das, who pointed out something that I never noticed before, the dais, and he said there's 4 people of color on the dais and not a single person there testifying. And that's why you want different people in these elected positions.
Well, it's like the healthcare bill.
Correct.
I know that there was a photo that went around a couple of years ago.
12 dudes.
Right. All making legislation around women's healthcare.
Yeah.
Which is just absurd.
There was a little bit of diversity in that photo. I don't know if you noticed it. They all had different colored ties on.
Oh, yeah. That was the diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So this is why I'm very passionate about changing the conversation and building the power amongst communities of color and women and minorities and marginalized groups, because the best way to change this stuff is to balance the power. If there's too many men, you need to balance it out with women. If there's too many white folks, you need to balance it out with communities of color. If there's too many women, you got to add men. I mean, it's just the diverse. We are nowhere.
That'll be the day.
What's that?
That'll be the day.
Yeah. I mean, I love what Ginsburg is like. When is it too many women enough? When there's 9.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what that quote came to mind when you were just talking about that. So you have made your intentions known pretty much from the day that you were sworn in, because you showed up in a kurta, right?
Did.
Beautiful purple.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful purple.
The purple was very purposeful.
And explain that.
Because my district is, very diverse. Yet the voters that vote, it doesn't reflect the diversity. A lot of folks in my communities can't vote because they're not citizens. And so the purple was to just sort of illustrate the diversity in my district, which is, not Democrat, it's not Republican, it's kind of in the middle. It's sort of purple. And then I went out and bought a purple water bottle, too.
I love it. And purple's my color.
Yeah,
so
I see that. You're wearing purple, too. And so that, for me, was just a reminder of that I'm not there to represent Democrats. I'm not there to represent Republicans. I'm there to represent my constituents. And so I did very purposefully buy a very beautiful, from a local Kent store, kurta, as you mentioned, a Sarwar Kameej, purple outfit that was very loud and very bright, because I wanted people to notice that when you elect diverse people, they are allowed and should bring their cultures and their whole selves to the Senate floor.
I thought that was a beautiful way to approach it. So one of the things, I had read an article in, I think it's India Today, about your swearing in ceremony. And what I thought was interesting was that, and I'm not sure if I know the right phrasing around this, but you took the oath with the Bhagavad Gita. Is that right?
I did, yeah.
That's fantastic. And most people, I'm sure, I guess I would say most people take it with the Bible, or it's
they gave us
required.
The choice, actually. And I thought that was really very cool to show that. And I think it probably happened with Manka, because I heard that when Senator Dingor got elected last year, she also requested the Gita, and I did too. So I brought one. My father was very excited to provide me with one. And so and that day I was so excited. At breakfast, I had all my friends and family. I had like 10, 12 friends and family flying from all over the country to be there. And so at breakfast, I had them all sign the Gita. And it was really emotional.
That's beautiful. What was emotional about it?
It's, I am the first woman, as I was born in Bihar, which is the poorest state of India. I mean, I know you've been to India many times. It's where all the NGOs go.
I haven't been to Bihar, but I'm going to go with you.
I would love that. Well, you have to wait till I get married. So, it's the poorest state in India. It's the most backwards. And I am the first woman, I don't think it's person, from Bihar to be elected to state or federal office in the United States. And so that day was emotional. To be the first in something is both an honor and sad. It's 2019, it's like, why am I the first woman from my state to be elected in this country? And it's an honor. And the Indian press went absolutely nuts. I mean, every day there were 5 or 10 articles, and of course they're all in Hindi, so I can't read them. I don't know what any of them say.
Google Translate.
Yeah, and I was interviewed by BBC India, which was really exciting. And, obviously India Today is sort of like the, USA Today or New York Times of India. And so that was an honor. And it was really cool, and I should probably follow up with those news publications about, now that I have some time. But yeah, it was really cool. And so walking down, and I'm an emotional person anyway, but my closest friends literally flew in from all over the country, and my parents and it was.
That's fantastic. When I saw that article, I got a little emotional myself because I know. And I hear stories, we're in kind of a tech-centric city here in Seattle with a lot of Indians here. And I hear stories from our own friends who've come from very small villages in the middle of Northeast India, in Nagaland,
that's exactly
and
where,
just in these very remote places. And they are doing really well in technology, with, double masters in engineering kind of thing. And I just know what it must have taken, or I try to imagine what it must have taken to go from there to here. So congratulations.
Thank you. I was born in the smallest village, it's super small.
And you haven't been back there.
I haven't, but they erected all these, I don't even know what you call them, posters or banners. And my grandfather.
In your honor?
Yes. Oh, yes. My grandfather has been very successful in his career too. He was I think he was the equivalent of the Surgeon General of Bihar kind of a thing. I still haven't figured it out. And so he after he became successful, he and my family started, we have a high school named after my grandmother, a temple named after my grandmother, and I think high school, temple, and hospital.
That's a big deal that it's named after a female.
No.
It?
Well, maybe. I don't know. But, it's called Damayanti Das and Gian Das School or something. And so it's, so now I'm have made it there, and I hope to get back to India in the next couple of years.
Well, please tell me when you go.
Oh, yes, I would love for you to come. Yeah. I promised my great-grandmother that I would get married there, and that didn't work out in my first marriage, so hopefully the second time around.
Is there anyone close?
Well, maybe. We'll see.
Okay. We'll leave that for the next podcast. How about that?
Right.
So to get back to the legislature and what you're actually doing there, you have, at least the most recent thing that I read, and this could have changed, you have introduced 11 bills so far. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we did 11 and then a resolution. So about 12.
So is that normal for a junior senator? Is that what you're called?
A freshman.
A freshman, sorry.
We
of course,
we renamed our caucus the first year caucus because Senator Randall shared with us about, where'd she go? Wellesley, that they didn't call them freshmen because it's an all-women's school. Mm-hmm. So we referred to ourselves as the first year caucus. I don't know if it's unusual or not. I know some of my other colleagues introduced more bills than that, but I think we all passed around 5 to 8. Mm-hmm. I think we all passed about that.
And your main platform around those was environment
and housing.
Yeah,
the things that so the committees that I sit on are the ones that made sense for me. So I had a mortgage business for 14 years, so I'm on the finance committee. I have an MBA in sustainable business and really am driven very much by the environment. So I am on the Environment and Technology Committee, and I also worked in tech in my 20s. And I was the vice chair for the Housing Stability and Affordability Committee, which was awesome with Senator Couture. She's amazing, wonderful mentor. And then the fourth committee, I'm on transportation because in my district, that's a huge issue.
Well, it's a huge issue all over
correct,
our area,
correct.
For sure.
And for me, it was important to be on a fiscal committee. There's only 2 fiscal committees, Ways and Means, which is impossible to get on first year. And then transportation. It was really fun because the 4 of us from my first year caucus were on Transpo. Senator Randall, Wilson, Joe Wynn, Senator Wynn, and myself. And so the 4 of us, and Liz, when she came in, Liz Lovett, Senator Lovett was on it too. So the 5 of us And it was kind of fun. I mean, we had a little bit of power because we voted as a block many times. So that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier also, because I don't understand the way this all works, is that you were in session for 105
5
days, I
days,
think.
correct.
So how does that block out then?
Yeah. So what's crazy, and most people don't know this, and I certainly didn't, is every bill in Washington state is passed in 105 days. This year was I think it was a record 485 bills we passed.
Like what?
We
What
passed-
needs to be passed?
Oh my God, we passed so many great things. I mean, we literally housing, transportation, environment. I mean, all the things that. So we haven't been in charge for 5 years, and then when Senator Dingler won,
Democrats.
Sorry, yes, the Democrats have not been in charge in the Senate in 5 years, and so we had the governorship and we had the House, but we did not have the Senate. And so when Senator Dingler won last year, it was huge. It was a $10 million race, the most expensive race in the whole state, because her winning was to flip the power.
Mm.
And when the power is flipped, that means Democrats are chairs of these committees and make the decisions on which bills come to be heard. And first, the bill needs to be heard. The first hurdle is the bill getting assigned to a committee. The second hurdle is, does it get heard? Once it gets heard and there's a hearing.
And that's heard in the caucus room that you described before.
No. Heard in the committee first. So let's just, I'll give you an example with my plastic bag bill. So I tried to pass legislation this year to ban plastic bags in the state of Washington. And if you wanted to buy a bag, it was going to either be a paper bag or a thicker plastic bag, the single-use T-shirt bags, no more. And that bill was somewhat controversial. And it was 10 cents.
And right now it's 5 cents.
Right now it's no sense because most.
Well, no, like in the
statewide.
Seattle area, it's 5 cents.
Correct.
I think if you want to buy a paper bag, otherwise you bring your own, and there's no plastic.
That's right. And there's 26 jurisdictions in the state that have bills, and they're all different. And so, what was so cool about this bill was that we had the plastic, we had the small grocers like PCC, the large grocers like Target and Walmart and Costco on board. We had the labor unions excited about it. We had the environmentals, obviously, the environmental community. The only group that we didn't have was the pulp and paper industry. And they're actually ultimately the ones that killed the bill, which I can talk about if you're interested.
Yeah, please. Why would they kill it?
I'd love for the pulp and paper industry to answer that question because it's a head scratcher. But we had all these groups that were really excited because the large grocers and the small grocers just want uniformity in the state. They don't want to have Edmonds at 5 cents, Issaquah at 5 cents, Seattle at 5 cents, and Tacoma at 10. Right? They just want it to be uniform. And then in each jurisdiction, some places are banning the bags altogether. It's complicated for them. So our bill was that. We got it. So the way the bill becomes a law, and, I was learning this along with everyone else that I know. First, you drop the bill in the hopper, which I did. And then the bill gets assigned to a committee. Mine was assigned to the Environment Committee. Obviously, Senator Carlisle wanted to hear the bill because he was interested as well. The bill gets a committee hearing. A lot of bills die there. A lot of bills don't get heard because there's only so much time to hear the bills. And so, and the more controversial the bill, the more people want to come and speak about it, like the 100% clean. My God, we were there for like 5 hours, which was worth it. Thank goodness we passed that bill. It's like one of the most amazing bills that we passed.
You passed that despite the hundreds of people in the room.
Correct. Because luckily we had enough people that care about the environment ahead of other interests. So we were able to pass that bill. And it was a great bill. Very proud of it. I mean, I didn't write it, but I'm very proud to have supported it. And so once the bill is then heard, then the committee decides whether or not that bill makes it out of committee. And again, this is why it's important to have Democrats or people who share your values there, because that bill could die in committee. So my bill then moved on, and then it had to go into a committee called Ways and Means. The Ways and Means Committee is very powerful. They decide that's a fiscal committee. If the bill is going to cost over $150,000, it goes to the Ways and Means committee.
If it's going to cost $150,000 or more to implement
Correct.
it? Okay.
In 2 years. Yeah. Then it goes to Ways and Means. My bill actually made $10 million.
10 cents at a time.
Correct. It went to Ways and Means, and so then it had to come out of that. Then once it goes, then they have to have another hearing in Ways and Means, and then those folks decide whether or not to pass the bill off into then a committee called Rules. So then the Rules Committee people are very powerful as well. And thank goodness for Senator Wynn, who was on the Rules Committee, who had the foresight to get on the committee.
And that's my district. Is that right, Joe Wynn?
It is. Yeah. Yes. You have a great representative here. All your representatives are great. And so then it's just asking the committee members to please get your bill out of Rules. So they get to vote every so often for which bill they want to come to the floor. So then I begged.
Boy, that's a long process.
Oh my God, we're not even halfway. So then I talked to all the right people. Somebody pulled my bill, and this as a first year, this plastic bag bill was a huge bill to have. And the only reason why I got it was because Senator Ranker had to resign, and so this was his bill. He'd worked on it for years. And because of my environmental background, they gave it to me. Mm-hmm. And so for a freshman to have a big bill like this was kind of a...
So you didn't start from the ground up.
I did not.
And have to squeeze that in 105 days. This is something that had been going on for a long time.
No. The bill got dropped like every other bill in the beginning. The sort of the lucky part for me was that it was handed to me because of my environmental background and my stewardship for the environment. So... I was very honored to work with Zero Waste Washington and all of the allies that trusted me with this bill. And so then once it gets out of Rules, then the floor leader, who in this case is Senator Leas, has to decide whether or not the bill gets time on the floor. And the Senate floor debate is a very precious time. And so that bill then was pulled out of Rules. Then Senator Leas agreed to hear it on the floor, and then we got to hear it on the floor. And you don't put a bill on the floor that isn't going to pass because that's a waste of time. So in order to get the bill on the floor, one of my Democratic colleagues wanted the bill to be 5 cents and not 8 cents or not 10 cents. And that's why we ended up at 8 cents. It was sort of a negotiation. And so then he asked for Republicans. He said, I will do it if you get any Republicans to sign it. I don't think he thought I could do it. We got 4 Republicans to sign the bill. So that was cool. Got it passed at 8 cents. Nobody thought it would leave the Senate because the Senate has usually been the sort of the harder one to get bills out because before Senator Dinger got there, bills would die in the Senate. I got that bill off the Senate floor. The allies, the environmental community, the small and large grocers, they couldn't believe it. They were just shocked that I got this bill off the floor. And they worked very hard. And obviously all these bills need lots and lots of allies and support. And so I'm very grateful for the large team that worked on this bill. And then it went over to the House. Then everything I just described to you has to happen in the House. It has to be decided to be heard. Then it got to get out of committee. And then and my bill went through, there's 2 fiscal committees over in the House, and it went through both of those committees. So I actually had an extra step over there. And then I got it all the way out of Rules, and then the speaker wouldn't bring it to the floor. And so it literally died on the floor of the House. And the good news for me is that we'll pass it next year. There's a lot of things that are going to change next year. We're going to have a different speaker of the House next year. And so as soon as they decide who that is, June 14th or July 14th, I think they're making the decision on the new speaker.
Not to poke at them, but was it a Republican? Is that
No,
why?
No, he's a Democrat.
He's a Democrat. Okay.
Yeah. Speaker Chop thought that we had passed a lot of environmental bills last session. And so for him,
that was enough.
It was a lot. And, there is some appetite and, he likes to protect his swing members and that's fine. And so the bill didn't make it. And it was heartbreaking for me because I worked so hard on this bill. Of course. Not only myself, but the Representative Peterson, who, was the House sponsor for the bill. And he and I talked about it. We were laughing that we thought there was going to be a problem with the Senate, not the House. And so
is that how you spend much of your time, is working on bills?
Oh, yeah.
Is that pretty much the job of a senator or even a
and
representative?
Meeting all the people that want to come and speak with you about their bills and their budget provisos and their budget requests and the constituents. And, I could have 6 meetings in a day, all 15 minutes. And I can go from talking about immigration to the environment to homelessness to that was just like every 15 minutes, it's a whole new topic. And as you know, I'm 100% extroverted. And this job, the first 8 weeks made me an introvert. I would go home at night and I was literally just exhausted.
Yeah. Do you have control over your calendar? Like I know that you had some say over us getting together,
Sure.
and it made sense because you were going to be in the area, I think too, which was just perfect. But do you know from day to day who you're going to be meeting with, or do you just kind of come in, or maybe even know a week in advance? But is someone really just kind of setting up your meetings?
My calendar changes on an hourly basis when we're in session, and my legislative assistant, Chio, is the most incredible woman, human superwoman that I've ever known. I was very lucky because she worked for Senator Hasagawa for 4 years. So when I asked my strategist who I should hire, I said, obviously I want to hire a woman of color. And he said, well, you need to hire someone that has been there 4 to 5 cycles. I said, okay. And luckily I was able to find a woman of color who's been there for 4 to 5 years. And he said to me, he's like, Mona, you can't both need to know where the bathrooms are. And it was like I always laugh about that because it's so true. And like,
that is true.
And I say to everyone who asks, I would have never passed 6 bills if it hadn't been for Chio, because she was on top of it. Okay, now you need to send this letter. Now you need to do this. Now you need to call this person. I mean, she literally walked me through it. I'm still going to need her guidance next year for sure, but I'll need it a lot less because I now know what it's like to pass a bill. I passed 6 of them. And so the plastic bags bill did not pass. I'm confident. Pulp and paper industry, hear me now. It's going to pass next year, and we'll probably pass it at the 10 cents, not the 8 cents. I was just in Hawaii, and my goodness, their bags are 16 cents. So I'm really excited to pass the bill. We got a lot of publicity. We had kids from elementary schools writing us letters and sending us pictures about this bill, and it inspired a lot of people. And it would have been the 4th state in the country to pass the bill, and then Oregon just passed it. And so, we'll pass it again next year. And next year I'm really excited to work on, we tried to pass, other colleagues of mine tried to pass plastic straws, plastic silverware, packaging, and I just met the woman whose bill passed in Maryland about the styrofoam bill. So that's where I'm going next year. I want to do bags, styrofoam. I want to support my colleagues on straws, utensils, and packaging. And I think that what happened was we did pass a lot of environmental bills. And next year, we can come back, hopefully, and pass all the ones that we weren't able to get through the legislature this year. And I think the appetite is there for them. I think
oh, my goodness. It's all over the news.
Yes.
Just everybody understands the environmental degradation of using straws and plastic and single use. Like, it's in the lexicon now.
Well, when you have Canada as a country and the UK passing sweeping legislation to remove single-use plastics, it's no longer a hippie thing to do.
Right.
It's literally, and we have dead whales. I mean, my God, if I see another picture of a dead whale, I'm going to just lose it. And today, for example, you asked about my schedule. Today I met with a mammal biologist who specializes in marine mammals, and we talked about the orcas and the porpoises and the otters and all the ecosystem around the Salish Sea, which is where she lives up in Anacortes. And we're going to put together a bill. And then I met with, Immigrants' Right Project, Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project. We're talking about immigration reform. And so now that I got a little bit of bills under my belt and I understand my job more, it's like these 6 bills were legislation I was proud to support, but I didn't write any of those bills. And so by the time I get there in January of next year, I passed 6 last year. Of course, I'm an overachiever, so I want to pass 12 next year. And now some of these bill ideas will be mine.
So let's go back to so you were in session for 105 days.
And next year will be 60 days. So we have a short session and a long session every other year.
And then what do you do between your 105th day or your 106th day?
And next January? Yeah. A lot of legislators.
I didn't realize it was such a short, that's...
Yeah. That's it. So in Oregon, they have a little bit longer. Most states have a part-time legislature like us. Some of the larger states, Illinois.
So you really have to get in and get things done in a short period of time. There's no.
I told the woman that I met with today, is like, this bill has to be ready by the end of December. Yeah, fully baked. So that, now I understand how you can have a business also, because you talked about wanting to, or like starting your business, Moxie. Yeah.
That's one thing. But you talked about another business idea.
Yeah, I had a mortgage business before that. Moxie
well, I know
Money,
that. Are you still doing that?
Yes and no. It's going to take on a little different of an iteration. I'm going to help other organizations with mortgage related things. But, I'm Moxie, my consulting coaching business, coaching candidates is really, we have 40 clients already. There's a lot of need out there. And the thing is that I'm filling a niche. The larger consulting firms don't take clients like I'm working with. They're school board clients for like Black Diamond, Kent City Council. And so a lot of the fundraisers, they charge a lot more money than well,
when we last talked, you had mentioned, because I was so fascinated by it, that you had gone to kind of a preparatory, like a kind of a school to get educated on how to run.
5 of them.
Okay, so they exist, but what you're doing is a little bit different.
Yeah, so what I'm doing is to supplement some of these. Like Emerge Washington is one of the training classes I went to locally, and they do a great job in their boot camp. It's like 5 or 6 months. But what they don't do, and I can tell you this as somebody who went through their program, they don't do the consulting piece afterwards. They teach you a little bit about fundraising, but they don't teach you how to fundraise. What's my secret sauce and my special skill, which I'm super excited about, having finally honed it in after 47 years, is I proved this because I worked with 2 clients recently. One who said, when I met with him, he's running for Kent City Council, Awali Farah, who's from Somalia, who's amazing, brilliant, worked at AT&T as an engineer, was retired at 55, awesome, wants to give back to his community. His wife, Shamso, started Living Well Kent. They, created the farmers market, like just amazing community leaders, retired and wants to, of course, do more. And so I got to his house and we had a long conversation, and I said, how much do you want to raise? How much did your consultant tell you needed to raise? He said, 50,000. I said, great. How much have you raised? He said, like 12 or 15. Great. By the end of our day together, because I know I have this magic sauce and magic juju for fundraising, what I didn't know was, could I teach it? And at the end of the day, Awali made 5 phone calls and raised $1,750. He called 5 people that he wasn't planning on calling. He called 5 people that gave him money 2 weeks before. And not only did they give again, most of them doubled their commitment. And he said, when I walked out of the room, he said 2 things that obviously made me cry. First one was he looked at his wife, who I know, Shamsho. She came home from work and he said, Mona just made me fearless. And then the second thing he said was, I can raise $100,000. So he went from raising 50 to saying he could raise 100. And that was in 8 hours. My second meeting was Sophia, who is running close by here in Burien City Council, who did run for the state Senate seat, didn't make it past the primary because Joe did. And she said at the beginning of our meeting, she wanted to raise $25,000. She made 3 calls, again, to people she wasn't planning on calling, and raised $4,500. And she told me by the end that she could raise $50,000. So I walked out of that saying, okay, I can teach this. And, and I'm writing a book, and, I'm going to put all that in the book, and, I have a great staff, and, we're working really hard to work with these 40 clients, because if they can raise twice as much as they think they can, and I told Awali, I said, if you raise $100,000 for a Kent City Council race, I said, everyone in this town is going to talk about you. And then when my seat opens up or the House seat opens up, you will be the next choice, because anyone that can raise that kind of money is a community builder. And anyone that can raise that money in politics equals power. And that's what's great about my little secret skill, is because if I can raise money, and I did, I raised $600,000 basically by myself with no help from allies or the Indian community or anyone else, just one call at a time. I know you gave me money. Thank you, Beth. It's power in this society, sadly, for politics. And I'd love to change that at some point. But that's the way it is now. So you got to work with the current system while you change the system for later. And so for me, and the way that I'm doing it is I'm changing their mindset. Everybody hates to fundraise. Everybody hates making the calls. And if you ask any candidate, they would say to their consultant, God, is there anyone that likes to fundraise? And all the consultants would say, yeah, Mona Das likes to fundraise.
Senator Mona.
Well, Senator Das now, yes. But not back then. And so what I love about changing someone's mind about it, and I've done telephone sales my whole life, right? I've been on the phones. That's where I got my start in software sales. And, I ran my whole mortgage business over the phone. I very rarely met with clients towards the last 10 years. And I can do it and I can teach it. And that's what's really exciting for me, is because what I've told them, and I'll just share the secret sauce here on your podcast. The secret sauce is this: not everybody can run for office. Okay? Everybody is upset. Everyone that shares our values is upset about what's going on with Trump. Everyone that is upset about what's happening in our country in regards to immigration, or, the thousands of things that are being under attack every day, they want to do something, right? Like we talk about, what are we doing about the kids in Texas? We're not doing enough, because we've already stopped talking about it, because there's more atrocities every day. So everybody is upset and they don't know what to do. And so you, Wally, or you, Sophia, or you, Beth, one day, or me, we have the courage to run. And we have the courage to put our names on the ballot and figure it out. I didn't know what I was doing when I decided to run for Congress, but I learned. And then I took all the mistakes I made in my congressional race, and I immediately made those changes for my Senate race, which is one of the reasons why I think I was able to win. And everybody says you don't usually win your first race. I just ran twice in the same cycle, which is pretty unusual. So with the Wally and Sophia and all the other 40 clients that I'm going to work with, what I'm sharing with them is this: you have the courage to run. And when you call your friends and family, you are inviting them to participate in democracy. And I say, don't get off the phone until you get a commitment to do something. And if they say they can't give you $100, then ask for 50. If they can't give 50, ask for 1. And I will tell you how many people, well, I don't have any money. Well, can you just give $1 so that you are then a donor? And nobody wants to donate $1. Even folks that really didn't have the financial resources. And I'll tell you what, those are the ones that made me cry the hardest when I got a $3 donation. Because those people really can't. Those folks that give me $3, it was just, oh my God, it's heart-wrenching, right? And of course, I appreciated the $1,000 and the $2,000 donors as well, but I had less of those for sure. And so I say to Wally and Sophia and any of the other clients I work with, it's like, look, you're giving them an opportunity to participate in democracy. You are giving them an opportunity to participate in your leadership. You are giving them an opportunity to participate in the future of their community. And when you change that mindset, it's very quick. And they literally see themselves as the leader that they have stepped up to be, and that they are now asking their friends and family to build power amongst their community. And a Wally is not the first Somali to run. And a few of them have run and become very, Zaki Don is one of them that I can think of. A few folks from the Somali community have run. Some have been successful, some not. But what I told a Wally is you are now training your community to step up and give. And if you can raise $100,000, then anytime anyone needs anything from the Somali community, you're the first phone call they're going to make. And then my secret mission, not so secret, is that when we're ready for 2020, now we've got the Somali community activated, because if they can't give $100, they give 1. And then Awali doesn't get off the phone until he says, will you come to my next fundraiser? Will you tell 10 friends? Will you post on social media? Will you knock doors? Will you make text messages? Will you make phone calls? There is literally 100 things that someone can do to help the campaign. However, nobody knows that unless they are asked by the person who is running. And many of my friends, for the first time, came down and knocked on doors and were grateful that they had an opportunity to participate in said democracy. And one of my friends, Michael O'Brien, who lives here in West Seattle, he said, I was always, and he's a sales guy, right? Like super outgoing, just like me. And he had so much fun knocking on doors with me. And he said, I wish I'd done this sooner so I could come back again. He said, I didn't realize that you don't knock on every door. So we use technology to make sure you only knock on doors of people who aren't going to argue with you. Like we're never going to, no one's ever going to convince me to vote for Trump, ever. That would be an exercise in futility. But I might be a swing voter in some other issue. Well, I'm not. I'm pretty black or white. But
you might.
Yeah, maybe.
I see. I get your point.
You get my point.
Yeah.
So we send people to knock on doors for people that are going to be receptive. And for me, I only knocked on what we call persuadables. I knocked on doors for people who didn't vote all the time or voted sometimes Democrat, sometimes Republican. And since we don't register here as Democrat or Republican, it's all algorithms to figure that stuff out. And so inviting people to participate in democracy. And Awali was able to raise immediately, like I said, he called a friend who had donated $200 2 weeks ago. He said, hey, we got to build community. We got to build power in the Somali community. And he called someone who was well-resourced. And he knows, we all know which of our friends have money and don't, right? Depends on what kind of car they drive. And we know, right? And so he called a few friends that had the resources, and he got them to donate again 2 weeks later, double the amount, because I literally helped him change his mindset.
I wish you were coaching in the business space, because I am taking, I'm sitting here and I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Absolutely. But I'm also thinking that this kind of approach can be applied to anything across the board. Like literally. I can see why you had a successful mortgage business, or why you create businesses and you're working on your own, because you've got that moxie, you've got that energy. Oh my gosh, like.
And this is me without a voice.
Yeah,
imagine.
Yeah, I know you were saying. No, I, it's hard to believe. But I asked you before how you structure your day, and you said that Chio is very involved in that. So now you're out of session. What do you do like on a daily basis? You said you just got back from Hawaii a couple of weeks ago. And
I took a month off.
And on that trip, you had some business ideas.
I did.
So what was that all about?
Well, it was a crazy, I ran for office for 20 months, and then I was in session for 3. And I don't know if all candidates go through the ringer like I did, but my mission is to make it shouldn't be that hard. When you have someone like me that's passionate and smart and outside the box thinking and innovative and all of the things that people have told me that I am, do we really want to take candidates like that and put them through the ringer and make them feel bad about themselves and, oh, you're not knocking on doors and, oh, you're not fundraising and then, oh, by the way, here's 400 endorsement forms that you need to fill out. And we do this thing as Democrats, I call it the purity test, the Democratic purity test. It's like, oh, I listened to that podcast. She said that one thing, right? We're doing it with Elizabeth Warren. We're doing it with Kamala Harris. We're doing it with all the women. Don't think we do it with the men. I could be wrong.
We might, but it doesn't stick.
It doesn't stick.
Everybody jumps on board when it's the women.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of which, this is going to be a little bit of a sidetrack.
Yeah.
Did you see the movie The Inventor?
No.
Oh, you have to see it.
Okay.
It's about a woman entrepreneur in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
Who she kind of fashions herself after Steve Jobs. And next time you're on the podcast, watch it. Next time you're on the podcast, we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay.
And there's no doubt some of the things that she did were a bit egregious, but I just don't think that she would have gotten the shit that she did had she not been a woman. Like if she was a man, it would have been a different story. It's really, really fascinating. It's on HBO Go. Okay,
cool. That sounds great. My schedule is right now, I'm working on things that I want to work on. I got dipped my little toe in, and now
you're not expected to be putting time in.
We make $45,000 a year. Okay. That is, to break it down for those who are listening still, thank you, $4,000 a month. After taxes, it's $3,200 a month. My rent in Kent is $1,600. You do the math. I mean, I have a car payment. I have a student loan payment. I mean, I haven't paid my student loans in 2 years. I made my student loan payment last week for the first time in 2 years.
You get paid throughout the
Correct,
year.
we do, which is great.
Not just when you're in session.
Yeah. But you can't live on that, and not in this area. And so everybody has to work. And so I tried to get a job. I called, people that I thought would be excited for me to work for them. Crickets. And turns out no one really wants to hire a legislator. And so I did what I always do. I just started my own company. This time, the fourth or fifth time around, I launched it in 72 hours. I had 8 people on my advisory committee. I had 3 or 4 clients, and I had 5 staff. It's so much easier. And it's so much easier to start it the second time or third or fourth time around because you've already made the mistakes. You've already
and you have connections, and you know what you're good at.
You already gone through analysis paralysis. You know how to just boom. And I launched it, and my goodness, we already have 40 clients, and it's been great. And I'm super excited. And like you said, Beth, my skills for connecting and being a super connector. I mean, I did write a book called Confessions of a Super Connector, and I'm really good. And so I took a Wally to a networking event. And him and my 2 staff came in after me because I was sitting on a panel. And they all sat at the same damn table. And I went over to them. I said, y'all already know each other.
Split up.
Move. And they looked at me like, oh, she's right.
Yeah.
And then they split up. And then Awali, was able to network the room because I taught him a little bit of that. And so my skills are very transferable in business, in politics, and nonprofits, whatever. Fundraising is fundraising. It's just sales, right? I mean, what I'm teaching is sales and confidence. And, I never knew what was going to come first, the political career or the motivational coaching. And obviously the politics came first, and now I'm doing the motivational coaching. And, I'm excited about a TED Talk, and I'm excited about the book, and I'm excited about, a TV show, and, all the things that I want to do.
Well, with all that going on, you said this first, did you say the first 2 months or the first 6 weeks of legislation, you just you were just wiped out because you had so many meetings.
Wiped out.
What do you do to take care of yourself other than go to Hawaii for a month?
Well, normally my favorite place on the planet is Olympus Day Spa. And I had bought, passes for Tacoma, and I was in a place of such overwhelm that I couldn't even do the self-care. Self-care for me was just going home and watching a lot of Netflix on the weekends and eating tacos. I love tacos. And so that's all I could do, because even being at the spa, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I live in Kent and I'd have to drive to Linwood. It's 45 minutes away. And so I couldn't. I would crawl into bed on Friday afternoon after I got home from session, and I would literally not leave my couch until Monday morning. And I didn't call friends back. I didn't, my dog.
Did you feel depressed?
My dog died, in February while I was in session.
Oh.
And I was so numb from being overwhelmed that I didn't even cry about it until I went to Hawaii. And so
did you feel like that was a depression at all, or do you just feel like that?
No, because I'd wake up on Monday morning and be fine. I think it was being an introvert for the first time in my entire life. And, I had a friend of mine from grad school who used to say, after you guys leave, because she was on a team with 3 extroverts, after you guys leave, I usually stare at the wall for an hour. And I was like, what the hell? Because we would be like, come on, let's go out for drinks. And she's like, no. And we would all 3 go out to drinks, and she'd stare at the wall. And that was the first time I understood that. I couldn't meet anyone. That's why I couldn't call anyone, because I didn't want to have any more conversations.
Did it change after a time period? Did you get used to it?
No.
Or is it just you're out of session and now you can go back to
I didn't get used to it. It took me the whole session. Yeah, even towards the end, oh God, it was even worse because I was we were in Olympia. I mean, we spent weekends there. I mean, there were 2 weekends in which I didn't. Well, then I sprained my ankle, which, God, that's a whole nother story.
Do you think the same thing will happen to you next year?
No. I won't be as overwhelmed. And I will take myself to the spa. I will go to Tacoma. I've told a few of my colleagues that hey, and saw a few of them at the Olympus Spa, and I was like, oh, okay, you get it. And I told my colleague, I was like, we're going to the spa. I have passes. Let's go, because I prepared. I bought 10 passes. I didn't use a single one. And so that's my book. The first chapter of my book is self-care, because we women don't do it. And normally I'm really good at it. But like I said, the self-care that I needed at that point was just to go home and stare at the wall. If Chantel ever listens to this podcast, she's not going to believe that Mona Das said that she stared at a wall.
Who's Chantel?
Chantel is my friend who stared at the wall after we were there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so, for me, self-care, it comes in different forms, right? For some folks, it's a massage. For some folks, it's drinks with friends. For me at that time, it was tacos and Netflix.
Yeah, and you feel better prepared. So next time you're not going to be as overwhelmed. Hopefully. And now you kind of know what to expect.
I know what to expect. Well. I think for me, I haven't started a new career in 14 years. And so this was completely new. And I campaigned for 2 years, and I was a natural campaigner.
And then you're like, oh, shit, I got in.
Well, it was literally like, oh, my gosh. Everyone was like, what are your first bills? I'm like, I am so focused on winning that I didn't even think about what kind of bills I was going to propose. And so... yeah, I think that, like I said, I already have, 12 bill ideas for next year. You want to hear my most fun one?
Yeah.
Other than all the styrofoam and the environmental ones. Someone asked me yesterday, and I committed to propose a bill to rename Mount Rainier to Mount Tahoma.
Is that the original name of
Correct.
it?
I said, yes. And I went to work with my two colleagues from the Native community, Senator McCoy and Representative Lakanoff, to make sure that's what their communities want. And maybe they'll actually propose the bill, and I'll co-sponsor it. But yeah, I think that's really cool, to be able to do that. My gosh, the British changed Bombay to Mumbai to Bombay, right? Yeah. How hard is it to say Mumbai? It's not. Turns out it's not.
So what's, it's 4-year term that you have.
Correct.
Are you looking at all down the road, or are you just thinking, get me to the next session?
Yeah, no. I am very committed.
You were born in India, gosh darn it.
I know. I'm very committed to...
meaning you can't be president.
No, exactly. I know. I'm very committed to making sure everyone knows that I don't care if I get reelected. If I only get to serve the honor of serving my community for 4 years, then so be it. And when you say things very boldly, like, I don't care if I get reelected, suddenly no one has any power over you. And I do plan to run for higher office if that is in the cards. If I become, an international motivational speaker and that's where I go, great.
What's the next office step for you?
I really am very interested in making it to DC at some point. But that's today.
Yeah.
Who knows where I'll be after my 4-year term is up. I'm either going to be still interested in politics or I won't. And, and the thing that I've always thought about is, like, from what I've heard and read and understood, our system was not built for career politicians like Mitch McConnell. We were supposed to come in, serve for a few years, and get out. And I'm only 47, and in politics, that's very young. And so who knows? I might serve 4 years, I might serve 8, I might serve 12, I don't know. But what I do know is that I have 3 more sessions in Olympia, and I want to make them count. I want to pass legislation and help my colleagues pass legislation that will literally change the future for Black and brown kids in our state. To change the future for folks who have found themselves experiencing homelessness.
And for young villagers in the middle of nowhere, India.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that has been the most humbling is how many people have come up to me and have told me that my story, my journey, my path has inspired them. And, one of my favorites is a woman who worked on my campaign, was awesome. And she's young. I don't even think she's 26. And now she's running for Black Diamond City Council. Is
she of color?
No, she's a white woman and she's fantastic. But she's young and she cares and she's a teacher. Of course she should be on city council. And she's going to win because she knocked on doors for me, a stranger. And she cares about her community. And the city of Black Diamond deserves for her to be their city council member. And those are the people that I'm looking for to recruit, to train, to mentor, to coach, to help fundraise, to give the confidence. I definitely walk around with the confidence of a mediocre white man. And everyone, I had a friend tell me the other day, why don't you worry about anything? It's like, and I've been really thinking about this for 2 days. Sometimes you just don't seem to worry about the consequences of your actions. And why don't you worry about anything? And I just think about where I came from.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that when you do come from
nothing.
Yeah. Or, I don't know that about your story.
Yeah. My family.
So for one, I don't know that. So, but oftentimes the immigrant story is you come from nothing and you're driven because you're not afraid to lose anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of my story too.
Yep.
Like lower middle class in a very middle to upper middle class community. And I don't care about things. Like you might look around and you say, oh, I do have nice things, right? I'm not going to deny that. But you know what? I could walk away tomorrow and I could be just as happy. I really could.
It's not the things that make us happy.
No, it's not. It absolutely
And I learned that
isn't.
the hard way, right? Because I went from making $100,000 a year to $30,000 a year in one day. And I had to adapt my lifestyle very quickly. I've been through a foreclosure. Every bad thing that can happen to a woman has happened to me other than being beat up by my spouse, thank goodness. My spouse is an incredible man and we're still friends and he's wonderful. But I've experienced a lot of bad stuff and still I rise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't worry about anything because, I do. Obviously I have worries, but I don't let them get me down.
And you don't let them control you.
I don't let them control me. I think it's because I've leaped so many times and I've never known if the net was going to be there. And I've always survived.
Yeah.
I went through a foreclosure as a mortgage broker. I didn't tell anyone. I told no one. I went through my 401k. I had $180,000 in my 401k. Now it's $5,000. I managed to keep the $5,000. But, and maybe now it's $7,000 with the stock market doing well. I don't know. And so it's just, I don't know. I've just leaped.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because of my worldview came from my parents who both came here with $6 and didn't know anyone. And so I owe it to them and any other immigrant to try.
Don't we all? We all owe it, but I get it. The visual that I love is your face on a poster in Bihar, in some small village in Bihar, as an inspiration to some little girl.
Thank you.
There.
I can't wait to visit that site with you, Beth.
I know. I really, really want to go.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's plan it.
Yeah.
Actually, you do these types of things. Plan it. Let's go.
Oh, I would.
Let's call it
I would
Mona's Pilgrimage to India or whatever.
I would totally
We'll
do it.
get like 12 people to go with us. It'll be awesome.
Yeah. There was a little girl that I met in Northeast India in a tiny little village. And I was there with one of my groups and one of my tour groups, and the community put on this dance performance. And there was this girl, and to this day I have a photo of myself with her, this beautiful little girl, and the most amazing dancer. And she had to be 6 or 7 years old, just tiny, beautiful dancer. Yeah. And I pulled someone aside, a gentleman who was obviously kind of heading up everything. And I said, I will pay for her school. What can we do to foster this? Because she's amazing. She just had the presence and the beauty and the delicate, just these really delicate arm movements, just beautiful dancer. And with no irony or no thinking, he just said, no, she'll get married. Yep. I said, well, what happened to her? Can I help put her through dance school? No, she'll get married and have kids. And boom, that was it. And that was all. And to me, that was tragic.
Devastating. Yeah.
That was tragic. But that's the reality for so many. But if some little girl can walk through her village and see your face on a poster, that's up. And just like you did with
Your
Congressman
Jayapal.
Yeah, Jayapal, then you can change. Yeah. You can change a life with just a poster.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those things of like, you can't see it if you don't, you can't be it if you don't see it. And my story is an incredible journey, not only mine, but my dad's and my mom's and my grandfather, who was, you know, his father died when he was 3 years old, and his mom and him had to make it in India. And as a widower, you're at fault when your spouse dies in India. You might know this about Indian culture. And so women are always blamed, or men are always blamed for their spouses dying. And so the grit that it took for my grandfather to become the Surgeon General, whatever his title was in the state of Bihar, the grit it took for my father to go to college at 16 to the best engineering school in the country of India, and now they say it's better than MIT.
What is that?
IIT Kanpur.
Yeah, IIT, yeah.
Yeah, my dad went there. And then for me to take what I've learned, and, you know, my only choices growing up were doctor or engineer. And I mean, I'm literally the black sheep of the family. I'm literally the dumb one in my family. And that's the story I had, was that I was the dumb one. And to change that story now. And my father always wrote cards to me. And he's known in our family as like, he always writes cards. And he used to always say, be successful, love dad. Be successful, love dad. Be successful, love dad. And then when I got in the software industry and at 26 was making $100,000, the cards just said, love dad.
Because you were successful.
In his eyes. Because in Indian culture, the only success is monetary success. And then when I decided to run for office, I want you to know that I ran without my family support. You know, none of them thought I could make it. And most of my friends didn't think I could run for Congress and make it. And there were a few that stuck by me and said, you know what? They realized that I was so driven that maybe I was going to do something. I don't know. And my family eventually came around, you know, a couple weeks before the election. They realized that, oh my God, the governor is coming to her events. Senator Cantwell is coming to her events. Like, what has she done? And I did what I always do. I'm a very small person. I'm just a very big personality. And people took notice. And my family came, and my dad, you know, got on the phones and started making calls, and we started knocking doors together as a family. And now my dad's signature line says, Dr. Subodh Das, father, proud father of Mona Das, senator.
No way.
In Washington, yeah.
Wow.
And so it feels really good for everyone to be really proud of me. And the only thing I'll leave you with, because I do have to get to my barbecue, she's been texting me,
sorry,
is if you see someone with some talent or skills, try not to crush their dreams. Try to figure out what you can do to support them. Because I shouldn't have had to run for office for 20 months. I shouldn't have had to raise $600,000 on my own before anyone decided I was a good fundraiser. I shouldn't have had to knock 8,000 doors before anyone decided that I was in it to win it. And I did it anyway. And I'm grateful for my journey. And my goal is to make sure that anyone who decides to be brave enough to put their name on the ballot can do so with the support of their community and their family and their friends, and that their dreams can be realized, because maybe they don't win, but maybe they try and they encourage someone else to try for their dreams.
I got nothing else.
I've only cried 4 times, so, you know, it's a good podcast.
And you know what? And that was an amazing place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I don't think we could do anything else
other
than that. But thank you so much for coming, Mona. I appreciate
Thank you so much, Beth.
Gosh, that was just great. I really do appreciate your time and just your open-heartedness and just. And
I just want other people to. It doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't need to be this hard for people who want to serve their communities.
It's getting easier.
It is, because people like me are getting through. I just watched Bringing Down the House with AOC and, you know, some of the other women that ran for brand new Congress. And she said to the woman who didn't win, she says, in order for one of us to get through, 100 have to try. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'd love for that story to be, in order for one of us to get through, 2 have to try someday.
Mm-hmm. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Boy, she's got so much energy, doesn't she? I don't know many people like Mona, but we should all have a Mona in our lives, at least one Mona. She is such an inspiration, and you just know that she's going to be successful at whatever she does. Hey, one technical note to those of you who enjoy podcasts beyond this one and are listening using your iPhone. If you're using the Apple Podcasts app to listen, the one with the purple icon on your phone, do me a favor, dump that and check out an app called Overcast. Now, this is not a paid sponsorship. This is because I want to make your life easier. I know that Apple has announced that they're making some big changes this fall in terms of their new operating system, and that includes their podcast app. But I gotta tell you, as much as I love so many things about Apple, I hate the Apple Podcast app. I've checked out a number of other podcast apps, and I recently landed on Overcast, and I just love its layout and ease of use and the ability to search for podcasts by name or category. I have discovered some really great podcasts just because of the searchability function is so amazing on it. And now I'm like taking people's phones, my friends' phones, and I'm saying, you got to download this app because it's just so great. So it's called Overcast. This is just a public service announcement for me to make your life a little easier. Overcast. Go check that out. And once again, if you would like to support this show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing all of this positive information in a time when we are bombarded by so much negativity, go to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. You can also sign up for the She's Bold podcast newsletter from the website's homepage, and that just alerts you each time a new episode is released. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I am Beth Witwa on Instagram. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Be Bold group for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.